roll the roll and go. Where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. I am so grateful you have chosen to listen to me and to go on the travels and see the things and go to the museums that we have managed to go through for the last 2 seasons. I have really enjoyed doing this podcast, and I hope you stick with me. It makes me happy to know that people are enjoying what I do. On another note, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are on Facebook at Where Am I to Go podcast. We have lots of pictures. We have places that we go that we don't do podcasts on. And we have lots of things to see and think about when you decide you're going to travel or if you're just interested in learning about different places that we go. Also, we have an email account at whereamitigopodcast@gmail.com. And if anybody has any comments, ideas, thoughts, you are more than welcome to email me there, and I will do my best to answer, and we'll see where everything goes this season. I've got some neat things lined up, and I hope everybody is ready to go for a museum tour ride. Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today we are at a museum that I visited, maybe 3-4 years ago. It was totally fascinating. I had no comprehension of what I was going to see. But we are at the Franklin Car Museum in Tucson, Arizona, and I am here with Bill and with Tom. Tom's going to do the outside tour, and we're talking with Bill because he just informed me that he grew up in the neighborhood and spent a lot of time here with the original owner.
With Tom Hubbard. Uh-huh.
With Tom Hubbard. Okay, and Bill's going to talk to us here a bit in the living room or office before we head on out to do our tour. And so welcome, Bill. I appreciate you talking with us and telling us a bit about these cars.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first off, what is unusual about the Franklin car?
What is unusual about the Franklin car is they are air-cooled. There is no water cooled about them.
There's no radiator?
There's no radiator.
Wow.
Let me tell you how I met Tom. I met Tom when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
He came to my house, picked up me and my dad in a 1933 Franklin V12, and we drove it up to Catalina.
Now, just a second. V12.
V12.
Okay, so we're air-cooled.
Yes.
So I know that they had a lot of V12s back in the early 1900s, the 20s and 30s. They even had a V16, I think, in a Cadillac.
Yes.
But a V12 air-cooled engine.
Right.
Okay, now the Corvair had a Post 6.
I was president of the Corvair Association here in Tucson for many years.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. That's
okay.
the only reason why they allow me on their property here.
Oh, it's because you already know the air-cooled.
That's right.
Okay, and you had the Volkswagen, which was air-cooled.
Yeah.
And then you had the Franklin.
Right.
And it had a V12.
Right. How
unusual is that?
Well, they only made 100 V12 engines, Franklin engines.
Okay.
So they're kind of rare.
Okay. Okay, but all of the Franklins were air-cooled.
All the Franklins are air-cooled,
But you only had 100 V12s.
Yeah, well, the Mr. Franklin borrowed $5 million from the bank in 1926 to engineer that V12 engine.
Wow. $5 million?
$5 million. In 1933, when the bankers wanted their money back, he only had 100 engines built. Not enough.
Wow.
He couldn't recover, so he just closed the factory.
So he ended up going into bankruptcy,
right?
Or okay.
And he sold out that factory and everything. And
okay, and where was the factory at?
In Syracuse, New York.
Okay, that's a long ways from Tucson.
It is.
Okay, but we have one of the best, according to some of the different car magazines I've read. You guys have probably the best Franklin car collection right here.
We have the largest Franklin collection in the world in one place right here. We have 27 Franklins.
And how many total were made production-wise? Was it a big production number?
Yeah, 400,000 probably.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 1927 was their best year. We made 14,000 that year.
Really?
Yeah.
And are there still quite a few of them around? It's not something that you see when you go to car shows.
There's probably a few of them around yet. Every now and then we find somebody's found a barn find, and they come down here to find out what it's supposed to look like.
Okay. And so you've got 27 of them here on site.
Right.
And then they've also got a big museum up in Michigan, I think. The Gateway Museum, is that what it is? Another big car museum that I thought had somewhat of a collection.
It does, and I can't think of the name of it right now.
Okay. Not a big deal. I just crossed my mind, and I can't remember the name of it. But they've got large collections of every car, from what I understand.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and I think it's in Michigan.
Yeah, every museum around usually has a Franklin or two in it.
Do they?
Yes.
Okay. I guess there was a Franklin in the Deer Lodge Museum that we went to in Deer Lodge, Montana.
Okay. I was up in Alaska, and I went to the Fairbanks Museum out there. There's 3 Franklins in there.
Oh, really?
And they drive them every day.
Oh. Wow. Gilmore. That's it. Gilmore, not Gateway.
Yeah.
Gateway's in Colorado. And that's a pretty cool museum too. Anyway, okay, so how did this collection get started, and why is it here?
Tom Hubbard was going to be a mining engineer, and he went to college and got a degree.
Okay.
And the first car that he restored was a 1905 Rio.
Okay.
And he bought it from a guy in Texas, and the guy wouldn't accept his money for it until he got it restored. So Tom had to restore the car. And that was the very first car. And that got the bug started. Tom Hubbard, as a kid, came out here in a 1933 Olympic. It was his car his family had.
Okay.
That was his first
I've never heard of the Olympic brand.
We have one.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see that.
And so that he just got interested in it, and he's been restoring Franklins ever since. And he used to do a big business here, repairing Franklins.
Okay. So,
what year did he do that reel? When did he start with that reel? You know?
No, I really don't know. I'm not too good on past dates. I don't do history really well.
Okay. Well, the Rio was REO.
That's
Olds.
right. Uh-huh.
It's what turned into the Oldsmobile, and
Right.
then was bought out by GM at a future point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay, so that was the first car that he restored, and then he started restoring Franklin's after he'd done a couple of other restorations, or he just immediately started
Immediately went to Franklin. We have a 1925 Franklin, boat tail coupe that you'll see, and he did one for himself and one for Bill Hare at the same time. That was his first Franklin.
Okay, and Hare was a big car collector in Vegas, right?
Reno.
In Reno, okay. And so he was doing some pretty high dollar restorations.
Right, uh-huh.
Well, that's cool. Okay, and were the Franklins extremely popular here in the Tucson area?
Well, they were popular enough to have a dealer.
Oh, really?
We actually had a Franklin dealer here in Tucson, and it was right next to the Rialto Theater.
Okay. And so they must have sold quite a few then.
They sold, a few.
I would assume that they'd be kind of high in demand here just because they're air-cooled and didn't overheat.
Not so much. They were very expensive cars, so they were pricey. In 1931, for instance, or 1925, that car cost $3,100.
Which would equate to probably $30,000 now, $40,000 now.
Uh-huh.
$60,000 now. So it was a high dollar car.
It was a high dollar car. All Franklins were high dollar cars.
Wow. Yeah, but did they perform well in the high heat and stuff?
They did. They used to take the cars and race them down in the Death Valley days, where they had races, and they were the only car that survived the whole race.
Wow. Well, back in the day, I know that they had a lot of overheating problems with the cars that were liquid cooled.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so the Franklin seems like it'd be the ideal car for this desert terrain.
Right, and it was really good for up in New York or in the cold climates because there was no water to freeze. the doctors and the lawyers.
Okay.
They could just get out, start the car, and go. They didn't have to unthaw anything or put hot water in it or anything like that.
That's amazing.
Wow. And they dealt well with the cold temperatures
Oh
too?
yes, these cars somehow start really easy in cold weather.
Really? That's interesting because most cars don't like cold weather.
Yeah.
The oil gets thick and they balk a little bit. Wow. And Franklin was pretty much kind of on the cutting edge of things too,
Yes.
with a lot of their design.
Yes, Franklin was an aluminum foundry to begin with,
Okay.
and he had an engineer come in. Was that Wilkinson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, came in and convinced him that they could make cars. And so the very first car was a 1902 Franklin.
Okay.
We have one that we have Franklins from 1902 to 1905.
Really?
So they're all the same.
Okay. And so they just started producing the car
Yes,
from there.
It's interesting. He made the 1901 car, the 1902, the first year. He made one car, gave it to his neighbor, and said, "Drive it." He says, "Come back and tell me what's wrong with it." And so about a year later, Franklin went out looking for him. He says, are you supposed to come back and tell me what's wrong with the car? And the guy says, "There's nothing wrong with the car."
No reason to come back.
And by 1905, they had made 500 of them.
Wow. And so he had a pretty good market going too.
Yes, that car, like it went across the United States in 1904 in 31 days.
Is that a speed record or was that a
That was
travel
a
record?
That was a record. There was no roads then.
Okay. Wow. That's yeah. At that point in time, we didn't have any roads.
Right, so they had to make their own road.
And that I read a book about that, I think, and they were talking about how tough it was over some of these mountain passes, trying to pick and choose your way through the mud and the snow and the.
Well, not only that, but the guy was pretty smart. He had a train schedule with him. And
Oh,
he would
really?
take the cars across the trestles on the canyons.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's yeah.
Wow,
Okay,
that's
so
gutsy.
it was one of the first cars to make a transcontinental
It was
run.
it was a race that the other car companies had made up, and this the Franklin made it 2 weeks before everybody else. They were that fast ahead of everybody else.
Really? And were they self-oiling, or did you have to have somebody oil and
No,
stuff?
they were self-oiling.
Okay. I read a book by about Eddie Rickenbacker, and he was talking about the early days of auto racing. And he was saying that his job when he was like 14 years old and he was working for, I can't remember what company it was, but when they were on the races, their tires had different color treads on them to where when you saw the blue, it meant that you needed to change your tires. And you only got about 100 miles out of each tire. And he was also saying that his other job was to stand up there with an oil can and keep the valves oiled and stuff. And I didn't know if the Franklin was self-oiled.
We do have Franklins that we have to oil that way. Actually, the upper end on the Franklins, the upper valve assemblies, had to be taken apart and lubed every 250 miles.
Okay.
They did have an accessory that you could put on the car that would lube the upper end. That you
Okay.
could buy.
And was it an expensive
It
add-on?
was, yeah, it was very expensive add-on because you had to change the whole heads
Okay.
and put copper tubing in them and all that kind of stuff. And it had what was called an inertia oiler, and it sat on the firewall, and there was a jug of oil with a little weighted thing on top. And when the weighted thing bounced up and down, it delivered just enough oil to the top end where they didn't have to take it apart and oil it every 250 miles.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
Now, the first Franklins were 4-cylinder.
Yes.
And then when did they go to the 6?
1906.
Oh, okay.
So they had a 6-cylinder in 1906.
Yes,
Not many.
Which is, I was going to say, 6 cylinders in 1906 is kind of a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. They were mostly Fords.
They were, yeah. I was going to say almost everything was Ford, and we're talking pre-Model T. And Ford's first car came out in 1903, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know when they started mass production of the Model T.
1917.
Okay, so Franklin was doing a lot prior to Ford's Model T. even.
Franklin had the first assembly line.
Really?
In 1917, when Ford made their first assembly line, it was a failure. Ford sent his engineers to Franklin, and the Franklin engineers taught the Ford engineers how to do an assembly line.
Are you serious?
So
I've been told stories my whole life with Henry Ford invented the assembly line.
And he got the credit for it.
Like so many things. You know, yeah. Wow, that is amazing. So he was able to mass produce, and when did his assembly line start? Franklin's?
Probably early, because like I say, by 1905 they were doing 500 cars.
Wow, isn't that cool? The things I learned coming to museums and talking to people, the things I learned. So yeah, so you're well ahead of Henry Ford by a long shot in so many ways. The other thing that I learned in this book about Rickenbacker is he said that he had a situation where somebody came to buy a car from him, and the guy says, you know, if I can drive this car 100 miles to my ranch without it breaking down, I will buy your car. And he said that cars just weren't dependable back in those early years. You know, there was probably a lot like snow machines were in the 70s and 80s. If you went with one guy, you better have two or three. But it sounds like the Franklins had pretty much had all that worked out.
Much. In other words, that car that went across the United States in 31 days,
right?
No mechanical breakdown and one flat tire.
Really? And he used the same tires the whole way?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? How come that's not in the history books?
I don't know.
Should be.
It should be. Yes, it definitely should be in the history books, because
as far as dependability, I actually have two cars here that have over 100,000 miles on them.
Really?
Yeah.
And you haven't done much to them?
I haven't done anything. One of them I did a valve job. The other one is still running.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Especially for a car of that era. Mm-hmm. Well, that is so cool. What else do you want to tell me about Franklin's here?
Now you got me.
Oh, no, I got you. Well, I'm wondering if we ought to grab Tom and go take a look at some of these fantastic automobiles.
And then if something comes up,
I'll go along with you. I'll go along with you, and
all right.
Okay.
Make it right.
Okay. Well, that's good.
You don't trust me. You don't trust me to say the wrong thing, Bill.
I'll let you, and then I'll say.
Don't let me say the wrong thing.
And I'll let you go ahead and say the wrong thing.
We're heading out across the way here, and we're going to go into the showroom or the main part of the museum here.
We have 3.5 buildings.
3.5.
Yeah.
How do you have a half building?
Well, one of them's a garage.
Oh, okay.
But it has a car in it, so it counts.
Okay.
But these are none of these buildings are climate controlled. That's why we close in the summer.
Oh, you guys are only open through the winter months.
It's only during the pleasant season. Once it starts getting hot in here, we close it up because there's no cooling or air conditioning.
Okay.
But these buildings are sealed against the elements. So
right. Wow.
Now, right as you walk in the main building here, there is a helicopter engine right here on this engine stand, and this is an opposed flat 4 engine, and it was used in a helicopter and built by Franklin.
Okay, they also built airplane motors.
They did.
Engines too, right?
They did. After the cars stopped.
Oh, really?
They continued building aircraft and stationary engines, industrial type engines.
Okay, so that didn't get taken out with the $5 million loan. And,
I'm not sure exactly how that worked.
Not at all.
Yeah.
There was another company north of Syracuse. What is the name of in New York? The name
I
of
forget.
The town's,
I wouldn't know.
Newport.
I don't know.
Okay, something.
We'll find her. We'll get it.
It's on the video too. So anyway,
Liverpool.
Okay.
And they built the airplane engines. Poland bought the license in about 1978.
Okay.
And they were built in Poland. Poland made airplane engines.
Oh, really?
For many years. We now have the license back, and they're building helicopter engines in Colorado Springs.
Oh, really?
Who's we?
Interesting.
They're the United States.
Okay.
We bought the license back.
Okay.
That's interesting because Poland was Eastern or Soviet bloc country in 78.
Until about 1990, I guess.
Yeah.
When the wall came down.
Yeah. And then we see a Thor motorcycle from Aurora, Illinois. Little opposed 2-cylinder motorcycle. What year is that thing?
This is 1913. This company built the first 2 years of the Harley Davidson.
Oh, okay.
This bike is totally unrestored.
Really?
That includes the tires.
And it looks like it's in really good shape.
I understand it still runs very easily. So
wow, that's a cool.
And there's what's the joke about why it's called Thor?
I don't know.
Somebody told me that.
Said that. I said, if you sit on that saddle for an hour or so, you'd have a Thor butt. Maybe that's where I got the name from.
I'm sure you would.
Anyway.
Okay, now we're coming down to, we're going to get to see the 1932 V12 Sport Phaeton. Holy smokes, look at that engine. And that's all air-cooled.
It's all air-cooled. Those are not valve covers. Those are air plenums.
Oh, for the airflow to come through.
Right, uh-huh.
Really? It looks like it's got a great big valve cover on it.
Right. If you look right here, this is the head and cylinder for a V12.
Okay, and it looks is square, and it's got the air fins on it. Wow, and what a beautiful car! But you got a radiator on this thing, a great big grill.
Just a grill. That's only to hold up the hood.
There's actually that's right. The name that is called a front hood support.
A front hood support.
That's the name of that part in the parts list. It's not a radiator. It looks like one, but it's a front hood support.
Okay, now in this first gallery we have 6 cars, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And to try and describe them, if you look at a movie that's kind of set in the 20s, the old movies, you'll see these great big beautiful cars that have the vinyl tops or plastic top. The plastic wasn't there. Well, it was canvas, wasn't it?
Yeah, they hadn't really perfected the all steel body. Wraparound until later. So these cars had to be built a different way, and the tops are built or added separately or built into the rest of the car.
Right.
Okay.
It's wood. There's a wood frame. And the aluminum is wrapped around it.
Okay. And are they convertibles? Do the
Many
tops
of them
come
are.
off?
How many are not in here?
These are all you see the top on this one here.
Right.
That's what it looks like when it's up. This is what it looks like when it's down.
Okay. Right.
It's exactly the same top.
And these cars are absolutely beautiful. Lots of chrome. The styling of them is that 1920s, 1930s style car, but they're big. They're just gorgeous. And the grills on them, or the hood supports,
front hood
would almost make you think that they had a radiator behind them. But they're all chromed out and just beautiful, beautiful cars.
If you look right through there, you can look right through it.
Right.
Yeah. Look at it. That's the way Tom would take off his hat, and they would ask him, "Where do you check the water in this car?" And they couldn't get the ornament off or anything, and so Tom would take off his big hat, and he would look in here, and he'd look through the grill, and he'd look, and he'd look, and he'd look up at me and says, "Bill, we forgot to put the radiator in this one."
And again, this one here's got the straight 8, maybe?
No,
straight
6.
6. Okay, got it. Straight 6. It's a huge engine. That engine is really big.
Isn't this the first Franklin Tom did?
This is the first Franklin that Tom restored.
It's got a rumble seat.
He did one of these for himself and one for Bill Hara.
Okay. And this one here is painted a kind of a pale yellow. Beautiful car. The pen striping is just gorgeous. And it's got the great big 10-inch or 12-inch headlights.
Which would not reach the wall.
Really?
Yeah, there's only a 6-volt bulb in there.
Okay.
And they work really well over dirt roads, but when you got asphalt, it just absorbed all the light. But remember, you were only going 25 or 30 miles an hour.
Right.
So you didn't overdrive your headlights.
Okay, and were these run off the 6 volt? You said.
Yeah,
I don't need to go. I was going to say
we do have brass era cars in the other building that do not have electric lights in them.
Okay,
but by this time everything had electric in them.
Okay, and then
6 volt.
The one that has the V12 in it is kind of a real pretty two-tone gray color, a darker gray, or
No, that's brown, I think.
is it
The
brown?
lights in here is kind of bad, but that is brown, two-tone brown. That's dark brown fenders, light brown body. The interesting thing about this, in 1933, when Mr. Franklin knew that he was going to have to close the factory, this was the only color paint he had left.
Oh, really?
So all the cars from 33 on were the same color.
Wow. It's a really pretty color, though.
Oh, yes.
Bill, is it true that this is the only V12 dual cowl Phaeton that exists?
That's right.
There never was another one.
No, and the story goes, and I'm going to be, it's going to be, there was 9 of these cars built.
Okay.
4 were sold. None survived. They disappeared. Just wherever.
Wow.
Okay. When we started this project, we had a V12 engine, transmission, and rear end that we took out of a junked car. Was wondering what to do with it. So Tom and all of us got together and said, let's build it. He has the plan. Tom had the plans for all these cars from the factory.
Really?
So this car is done exactly as it would come out of the factory. We built this car right here on the property. It took us 10 years to build it.
Wow.
One of the neat things about it was I was just a kid.
And you were helping out as a kid?
No, I was getting in the way.
Oh, okay.
I used to come down here, and we had a couple of guys that could work English wheels.
Okay.
Okay? And I used to come down here and watch them take a square piece of metal and turn it into a door. It was the most amazing thing to watch.
Oh, I'm sure. And an English wheel is it's a big stand-up apparatus that has two wheels on it. And as you
push the metal back and forth, and there's a little pedal that you push, and it would change the
it would
angle.
stretch the metal.
Yeah, for about 1,000ths at a time.
Wow.
Until it got to whatever one you wanted to do.
And the thing that amazes me about that is you look at these long fenders and doors and all of that kind of stuff. That was all basically handmade.
Yeah, but the fenders were pressed.
Oh, were they pressed?
They were on a press, but this body, that was all hand done.
Wow. And so this is basically a replica of
This
what
is a replica, right? Actually, Franklin does not. No, this does not
acknowledge.
They don't acknowledge this car at all.
Well, it's really cool that they don't acknowledge it because I'm standing here looking at it. It's way cool.
They did make some.
Yeah.
But they're gone.
They're gone.
So there's nothing false or phony about this. This is a real, actual Franklin car that did exist.
It would have come right out of the factory. It looked exactly like this. This has a 2-speed rear end in it. It's a Columbia rear end. The car behind you also has a Columbia rear end. They made 2 kinds. They made a mechanical shift and an electrical shift. Honest to God, I don't know which one of these have.
Oh, wow.
Well, if you get your creeper, I'll crawl underneath and have a look. I'm joking. Anyway, this brown one, this dark brown one here, the chocolatey brown one that the top is up on, that looks just like the V12. This is the one that Tom drove back and forth to New York a couple times.
Twice.
Is that right?
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, that would have been really cool to see this thing going down the road.
This would have been 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That he did that.
And what was the top speed on like this one?
This one would get up to 60 miles an hour. It has a 2-speed rear end in it. It has a road gear in it.
Wow.
It's a 3-speed transmission.
Amazing.
It's just incredible.
And this one here, it has doesn't have a rumble seat in it. It looks like it's got a basket on the back of some sorts.
It's to put your golf clubs in.
Right. But it's a big car. I mean, you've got a big front seat, big back seat.
Yeah.
And
it has.
Are we talking about this car?
Yeah, we're talking about this.
We're talking about this one here.
Okay, yeah. The trunk that's in the car, the reason for the trunk is, if you notice, there's no windows.
Okay.
Those isinglass windows that snap on the side of the car.
Oh, really?
And they're rolled up in the trunk. That's the function of the trunk.
Oh, so the trunk held the windows.
That's right.
Isn't that interesting?
Well,
I never thought that.
Where did Mr. Franklin put his golf clubs? I thought that's what I thought the lore was about those trunks, that they were made just for his golf clubs. No. Not true. That's why you're here. I'm so glad you're here, because I would have had it wrong.
No. Okay, if we go to the next car, if you look back here, it
Right.
has a golf club door on it.
Yes.
If you look in it, there are some vintage golf clubs in it.
Okay, I'm going to go take a look here. And that sits kind of right. No, this is a single seat, only has a front seat.
Right, uh-huh.
And so that kind of sits underneath the trunk. It's got a little side door.
Isn't this a rumble seat car?
It's a rumble seat
Yeah.
car.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's got a side door that you can put some golf clubs or I guess you could even put a picnic basket in there. It's not real big, but
This is a much older car, this one here.
okay.
No,
And
well,
then we're
not
looking
much.
at 1926 Sport Touring.
Yes. The interesting thing about this car is this is the last year of the wooden frame.
Okay.
If you look right up behind the front wheel, you will actually see the wooden frame. It's laminated ash.
And how did that hold up?
Quite well. And the reason why they used ash is because the cars had to be flexible.
Okay.
Ash is very flexible. Okay.
Wow. I would have never thought about a wood frame in a car. I knew that they had a lot of wood, like for the doors
Yeah,
and
around
some
it,
of that
uh-huh.
type of stuff, but I didn't know that the frames were wood also.
Frames wood. The wheels are hickory.
Okay. And the wheel spokes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how did they hold up as far as going down the road and the metal bolts working against the wood? And I know that a lot of times you end up with things wallering out and stuff.
I suppose, but they seem to stay together pretty well. As a kid, you know how kids are.
Right.
I tried breaking the wheels. I tried doing everything, and I couldn't do it. So,
Well, that's kind of self-defeating. Wow.
This one's got a maintenance log or maintenance book in it, and it has all the instructions of all the things you have to do every so many 100 miles. So if you're going to drive one of these across the country, you need to have your book, and you need to consult your book, and you need to do what you have to do because you don't want to have a breakdown in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And the other cool thing about this is it's got a windscreen behind the driver's seat and the passenger seat. Was that a
Right.
privacy deal? Because this
No.
was, okay.
that windshield you bought as an accessory had it installed. The problem with it is, the reason that you had to have it is because when the top is down, it's a hurricane in the back seat.
did you
Okay.
notice the second windshield on the big V12?
I did not notice that.
It has its own little windshield for the rear seat. Same with that dark brown one.
Okay. Yeah.
And we got another
And
one
that's
back
and
here,
that's
too,
to
like
keep.
that.
Now I don't know that I've really noticed that on a lot of other cars and other museums I've been in either. Was this kind of a specific thing to the Franklins, or was it a common deal?
It was a common on all dual cal Phaetons or dual
Okay.
cal, but like my Corvair, that I didn't realize was that kind of problem. I have a convertible,
Okay.
okay, and I'm driving down the road and I got somebody in the back seat. I got the top down.
Right.
I'm fine. There's very little wind comes through the front seat there, and I looked back and I saw the people in the back seat and everything's going straight back.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Well, and of course, there's no conversation anyway between the front seat and the back seat.
Watch this.
Okay.
Me and my brother grew up in rumble seats as kids, okay?
Okay.
The first thing that we learned was when we got into a fight or an argument in the back seat, we had to resolve it ourselves because nobody else knew about it.
You know, maybe rumble seats need to make a comeback. And for anybody that doesn't know what a rumble seat is, it's a seat that is behind the regular cab of the car. You had the two-seat cars like the Model Ts and Model As, these Franklins, well, just about a whole lot of cars. And the trunk would lift up, and they had a seat back there. And so you were riding out in the open air in the back seat.
Right.
Here's our other V12. We have two of them.
Oh, you got
this
two
is the
of
other
them.
one.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And
Now, is this the same color brown as that other one?
Yes, exactly.
It
You can
is?
see the difference
Yeah.
now.
Wow.
It's got more light to it here.
You know, I kind of like the gray better. Maybe we need to change lighting.
You
Wow.
can see a little bit of streamlining going on here, starting, and it's too bad it's the end. There were no more Franklins after this. But instead of having this steep vertical front hood support,
Right.
this one has a slight slope to it. We're starting to
It
see.
sits at about a 15-degree angle or something.
And
Yeah,
the windshield's got kind of an angle to it also.
right. And it's also, well, this one here's got a hard top on it, and the top is a lot more rounded than what the...
Yeah, hard top, but it is a soft top still. If you look
Okay.
at it real close, you see there's still cover. It's a
Oh, in the
fabric.
middle. It's okay.
The reason for that is because the car still had to be flexible, okay? And so if you had a metal top across there, it would sound like a beer can.
Okay. And on this one, and maybe on some of the others, this one has vents coming. It has 6 vents coming down the side. Did those open up when you were?
Those are just for looks.
Just for looks. So they
Yes.
didn't have any air cooling capabilities.
The air is being forced through those special ductwork that's concealed on that V12, what looked like the valve cover.
Right.
That's on purpose because the air has to be kept in across the jugs, the cylinder jugs. And if you just flip the doors open here,
Yes.
Yeah, could you pull it forward a little? His car is blocked in.
His car's blocked in.
You're the driver.
Well, I better do it.
I
Oh,
can
the
tell,
dogs
I
are
can
locked.
tell by the buttons.
The
on
dogs
your
are
hat.
locked. Yeah, the dogs are locked in the back. Go ahead and do whatever you need to do with it. It's got a little backup camera sitting there. You can kind of help see behind you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Have fun.
anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So, no, these are just for fun. They don't do anything because the air is
Open and
kept.
close,
Yeah,
but that's just for fun.
but you can
design.
see, we have some of these other engines open and you can see the ductwork on the forced air cooling.
Okay. Now, were these cooled with a fan that blew through, or was it
Yes.
just kind of free flow?
And
No.
did you remember the cylinder, the head on
Right.
V12? Did you see the fan sitting next to it?
I guess I didn't. I saw the cylinder sitting there.
there's
It's like a
there's
squirrel cage.
Okay.
Fits right on the crankshaft. And each motor has
I
a
did see
different.
that.
Okay, it has a different size fan for the different horsepower.
Okay, so it brought the air from the crankshaft, like where the harmonic balancer would normally
exactly,
sit.
huh?
Okay.
Brings it up into a plenum and blows it down. And that was the first design. This will be the second design here.
Okay.
This
Wow.
one looks real heavy.
It is.
That car weighs 6,100 pounds. We call it the banker's car because in 1933, when the bankers wanted their money back, they got involved in the factory and they said it was too expensive to make them out of aluminum. That is an all-steel metal car. That car weighs 6,100 pounds
Wow.
versus the Franklin 4,000.
And the Franklin was made out of aluminum.
Basically, there was 8 of these cars built.
Okay.
And I drove one of these cars once. And it's like driving a tank. It only wants to go down the road straight. And the engineers did such a bad job on the brakes, you never knew which way it was going to pull.
Oh.
So when I pulled it back into the yard, I looked at Tom and I says, "It's all yours. I'm not driving that one again."
Wow. And so did it have mechanical brakes or
No,
hydraulic?
hydraulic.
They were hydraulic?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting.
That is.
Of course, no power steering or anything.
It's called Armstrong.
Armstrong. There you go.
Armstrong.
Okay. Boy, all of these cars are just so classy looking.
Now, these cool a little bit different.
Okay.
The fan, again, is off at the crankshaft right down here.
Okay.
Blows it up against this plenum here, which is sideways. So if you look over here, it blows the air across the cylinders this way, and
Okay.
you can see the fins.
Right. Okay, yeah, you can see the cylinders on this one, and you can see the fins on the cylinder.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
this is really cool the way you've got it displayed too, so that you can see the engines and
Yeah, I have these cars set up this way so you can see the right and left hand side of the same engine.
yeah, because when you're looking at it from one side, it's all nice and contained, and when you look at the other side, it's like you've opened up the engine and you can see everything on the inside. Wow. Now, okay, so these were run. It looks like you've got instead of a vacuum advance, you've got. Thank you.
Oh, these distributors have a vacuum advance and whatnot.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reason for the
Pulled that off
control
by
on these
accident.
is you had to have
Thanks.
octane selector.
An octane selector.
Octane selector, because if it get the ping a little bit, you need to adjust it so it didn't.
Okay, so
Didn't,
that wasn't for advance. It
No,
was for,
it would just to adjust the timing just slightly so that it didn't knock.
there was a lot of difference in gasolines, I guess.
Gas in those days were very poor.
I thought all cars had a timing adjustment, an advance adjustment on the
No.
steering wheel.
No. These, if you look at the ones in the building over there, they have the lever on it, and it's only for the throttle.
Oh,
It advances the engine RPM when you start them up cold, just like an automatic choke,
Right.
and runs it fast, and then you can turn it
okay.
down. Of course, us kids use that as cruise control, so you know.
Okay. So it had the regular gas pedal like
Yeah, right.
like a car, but it also had the ability to keep the choke up
Right,
or the RPMs up when you first started it.
Right.
Wow. Okay. And so we got.
And these, I don't know if you noticed, but these are right-hand drive cars. These were sent to the UK.
Oh, okay.
I did not notice that. I didn't look in far enough. Okay, so they were sent to the UK.
And they were owned by the guy that that ran the Woolworth operation in London. These were his personal cars.
Oh.
Very cool.
Okay. And all of them here down this side. We've got what, 5 of them down this side.
This one here is 32. Those English ones are 30. And notice how we're just starting to get a hint of the streamlining. Those are
Right.
perfectly flat fronts. Here we're starting to see just a tiny bit of a accent.
On the hood support.
Yes, on the hood support. So it's the future's coming.
Actually, these things here are so classic, I don't think that they could ever be left behind.
Didn't this one go to Pebble Beach, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it went to Pebble Beach. We spent more money on this car than we did on any car of the collection because it was in bad shape. We had to send the body to a body company up in Michigan.
Okay.
And then they brought it back and it wasn't right. We sent it again. Still wasn't right. So we finally just did it here and put it together. It's a very poor design because if you look back here, you'll see that there's no support right here.
Between
your door. Here's your door thing right here, and there is no support. So these things actually move out.
Oh, wow. And that was designed by Franklin, or
No,
was
this is the Ray Dietrich design car, and he designed cars for a lot of different car companies.
Okay.
But Franklin, he did a lot of Franklin cars.
Okay. And this is really interesting too. The back seat has a dash type cover or a cover of some sort that comes down over your legs, probably to keep a bunch of the wind and noise when the top was down.
This is just a Ray Dietrich design car. First off, you have to put the windshield down. It takes 2 people. There's a latch here, a latch over there, and then you can lift this whole thing up. When you lift it up, then you can open this door and get in or
Oh,
out.
my goodness.
You really?
Yeah.
That's kind of complicated to
It
take
was
passengers
complicated.
anywhere.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
The neat thing about it is you put kids back here. With this down, you cannot open this door.
Okay. So it was kind of a kid log.
Yeah, well, that, and it's a mother-in-law seat.
Right.
Right.
Wow. That is way interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen one that had that back fold down feature.
Oh, that's the only one I've ever seen.
Huh. And this is a 1932 model 163 Deluxe Purist.
Pursuit.
Oh, Pursuit.
Pursuit.
So what if I can't read? Pursuit.
I'm sure there's a joke in
Purist.
there somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway.
So this is Mr. Franklin's personal car.
This one right here.
Yep.
And did he custom make it for himself, or?
Oh, he had a design. Actually, it's another Ray Dietrich design car.
Okay.
In 1934, when the factory got sold, this car got sold to a guy in, I'll say, Florida. He took it down to Florida, parked it behind a barn, and left it.
Really?
Tom spent many years looking for this car. When it came in here on the trailer, I saw it. It was only this tall, and it rotted down to that level.
Okay, he's showing about half the door with that tall.
Sort of
Okay.
like a Loren and Hardy movie that
Right.
got squished.
If you
It
go
sort of
back
like-
and look in the trunk, you will see the bits and pieces that I saved.
Really?
Oh, cool.
Okay, now this car is like the old limousines is about the west.
It's a town car.
A town car. It's got the roof and passenger compartment
goodness.
totally
These are the
enclosed,
original
and the
parts.
driver would be,
That
the
were
chauffeur would be
salvaged
in
and
the
then
open.
copied.
Now, did Franklin drive this car, or did he get to ride in the back?
Franklin never drove a car.
Pretty well beat up.
He never drove a
I
car.
don't think so.
Wow.
He had chauffeurs the whole
Yes,
time.
this whole time.
Really? And this has the spare tire into the fender along with the mirror on top, and
Well, the reason for the mirror on the outside of this is because if Mr. Franklin wanted to pull down the security blinds that are in here,
this is a suicide door model.
that's right. If he wanted to pull down the curtains in here, well, then the driver couldn't see out the back.
Oh.
So
Oh,
he had to have outside mirrors
okay. And so he had the ability to shut curtains down all the way through the back here.
if he wanted to.
And then he could roll up and roll down the window. It looks like
Also,
there's
he could.
Yeah.
Is the little microphone on the
Okay, there
seat
is a microphone back there in the corner of the seat.
I see
He
it.
could talk to the driver, but the driver couldn't talk back.
Really? Wow. Wow. things are interesting. This is a beautiful, beautiful car.
It is.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Now, haven't there been questions about gangsters? Don't people say, "Oh, this is like a gangster car"? Did gangsters ever have these? And
No,
there's,
the gangsters did not like these cars. They were too expensive.
But didn't Al Capone's lawyer have one?
He might have had.
Somebody told me that Capone's lawyer did have a Franklin. There's a picture of him with one.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. It seems like gangsters maybe would have liked them from the aspect of you could shoot the radiator full of holes and never slow them down.
That's true.
That is
But if you get a bullet caught in the fan, that's not good.
Well, I guess, yeah. Okay.
All right, we have other buildings. So we're just about done with this building.
Now in the next gallery, and we're looking at,
These are older cars. The joke is that when we bring people in here, we say, now we're going to show you some older cars. Now, I blew it. Now we're going to show you some old cars. Duh.
right.
Those were kind of old. These are really old in here. And this is a Franklin. Most striking thing here is the Franklin engine on a stand out of the car. So you can see exactly how the thing was built. And the giant fan bolted directly onto the front. So as the engine is turning, the fan is turning. You don't have to worry about the belt.
Right.
And then the air, you can see this huge ductwork on top, sweeping across the top of the motor and pushes the air down across the cylinders. So if the engine's turning, it's cooling.
Wow. And yeah, it's a really big fan. This fan's probably a 12-inch fan, I'm guessing. And it comes into a ductwork that comes up over the top of the engine and blows that air.
Now, is this the same as in those English twins?
No, those are side draft engines.
Is this earlier or later?
This is earlier.
This is earlier.
Yeah, this is a downdraft. This, by the way, is an accessory. It's a heater.
Okay.
You bought this manifold, put it on the car, and it would take the air from here, run it through here, and it would pick up the heat off of the manifold.
The exhaust
and
manifold.
And run it into the car. That was an accessory. Very few cars had those.
Okay. So it was kind of like the Volkswagen heater
Exactly.
that worked really. No, it didn't.
Well, you asked earlier about in cold climates.
Right.
These had to have some kind of heating. Didn't they come with some kind of crude heating for the passengers?
No.
Unless you bought this.
In fact, she noticed that that there's a rope in the back seat. That is a blanket rope. So
Okay.
the people in the back seat could get warm. You had a little bit of heat from the firewall in the front, but that was about it.
So unless you bought this extra accessory heating device, you would just have residual whatever. And when did they introduce that?
Well,
that auxiliary heating, was it always available?
It was always available.
Okay.
It's probably outside.
Aftermarket or something?
Aftermarket,
Okay. Okay. All right.
Wow.
I found this in a junkyard. That's what I put it on.
Oh, really?
Now, here's the one, we were talking about the one across the country in 1904.
This is the actual one that
this
went.
is
Okay.
not the
We do
actual
have a
one.
picture of the actual one.
We had it
Okay.
here for a while.
Yeah, we did. We used to have that car here, which
Really?
is now in the Peterson Museum. And you notice that it doesn't have the back seat on it.
Right.
So that's how they took it across.
And this one's what you would see in 1905 because it's kind of compact. It's got the 2 seats. It basically looks in some ways like a carriage with a motor in it.
That's all. That's what they were.
The horseless carriage. It's got the brass horn that you squeeze the rubber on top and it goes honk honk, and it's got the lights that are kerosene.
Those are kerosene.
Kerosene lights.
Now, in the engine is a cross engine.
Okay, so it sits in
So
side.
yeah,
sideways.
if you open the front of a Chevy Cavalier or something,
Right.
you'll see a crossways 4-cylinder, and this is exactly the same thing, except it drives the rear wheels, not the front. There is no fancy fan or ductwork. As long as you're moving,
Right.
the air is ramming. If you're just sitting, there's no air boost going on. So you kind of got to keep going or shut the motor off.
Okay, they do overheat fairly easy.
I don't know.
We used to take this to shows, and we would start it to let people hear the engine,
Right.
which, by the way, is extremely quiet.
Okay.
And we would run it until we could feel that it was getting pretty hot. Then we would turn it off, but it was just sitting there. So
Okay. And it's got a hand crank. Instead of in the front like the Model Ts and most of them that you've seen, this hand crank sits off to the passenger side, right behind the fender. And when I say passenger side, I'm referring to U.S. because this has the right-hand steering wheel.
This is still a U.S. car, but they hadn't made up their mind how they were going to do it yet.
And why did what was the factor with that? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
yeah,
I don't
the
know.
reason for that is there were no roads even around the towns and whatnot at that time. The reason the steering's on this side is because they followed the ditches,
Okay.
and that's how they got around.
Okay.
When
Can
the
I add
roads-
can I add another little point that I read someplace? They said that when you were driving carriages and horses, you always drove from the right-hand side.
That's exactly right.
And so when they started making automobiles, they drove from the right-hand side because that's the side that the
That's
driver was
right.
always used to sitting on. And it probably was to keep track of the ditches, like what you're saying.
Also, when they started putting highways in, they wanted the drivers to see each other. So that's when they changed it to the other side.
Okay.
Now that we have a 1918 car over here that does have what we'll call correct modern
Yeah,
steering. So sometime between 1910 and 1918, that was standardized.
Yeah.
What is this?
What are we looking at?
The
Oh,
magneto.
that's the coil box. There's 4 coils in there, one for each piston.
Okay.
And was there a battery in there also?
The battery is underneath here.
The battery's
There
under
is
there.
a little tiny battery in here. This was one of the few battery operated cars. The other ones are magneto.
Okay. Wow. So with the magneto, did they also have the coil boxes, or
No, it was in the magneto itself.
it was in? Okay. Okay. That is so interesting.
Now right behind us is the truck here. Are there any trucks out there, or is this the only
This
truck?
is the only known Franklin truck in existence.
And this is a cool looking truck. Again, it looks a lot like a buckboard wagon.
That's right.
You got your high seat in the front, steering wheel kind of comes straight down. It's pretty compact in the front. If you were to hit a cow in this, you'd end up riding the cow.
No, this was a city delivery truck.
Okay.
So it was mostly in the city. You notice it has solid rubber wheels on it.
Right.
And the reason for that, they didn't want the driver to have to be changing flats all the time. So they put the hard rubber wheels on. This thing only went about 4 or 5 miles an hour.
Oh, is that all?
Well, that's when the delivery truck down to.
And this is a 1908 model. And the engine sat in this one correctly, front to back.
The engine in this truck is exactly the same one that's in that car.
Okay. So let's walk on over and look at this 1910 Touring.
That car, by the way, has never been restored.
Oh, really? That's the condition it's been in.
Has
Right.
it ever had a new tire put on it, maybe?
Those are 2 new tires. We got those. Bert got those tires from the Michelin dealer in Italy.
In Italy.
And yeah, he was talking to the dealer or the guy that manufactures it. He knew him when he for a while or something. And the Michelin and the guy from Italy says, "I think I have a pair of Michelin tires." And so he went back to the factory. He found them, wrapped them up, and shipped them here.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
that's how we got those 2 new tires.
So they're brand new from 1918.
Those are brand new, huh? Oh yeah,
When were these tires have been made?
I-
Have been struck? Do we know?
probably in the 30s or 40s
Okay.
sometime.
Okay, and on this engine, how does it cool?
Okay, that's different.
Because it doesn't have the same fan system.
Fan is in the back here.
Okay.
Blows it forward, up, and out.
Okay, so it comes from the bottom
Yes,
and brings it out through the top of the engine. And again, we have our fins on the cylinders.
Right. You can see them.
Right. And
Now,
so how did these valves, we got the oil can there. Back to what we were talking about initially.
You had to oil it before you started every time.
And then every 250 miles or
Every 10 miles.
every 10 miles,
This one.
you had to get out and oil the,
Yeah.
okay.
Don't forget to do that.
Wow. So you had to get out, lift the hood.
Well,
And did
actually,
it matter whether you were
there was
on real
no-
dusty roads or not?
It didn't seem to bother too much. This, remember, there were no roads then.
Right.
And
So
so
everything
you-
was dusty.
So not only that, but you didn't drive them very far.
Okay.
3 or 4 miles at a time or whatever. Every time you started it, you had to oil that.
Okay.
And if you really went for a long ways, it was only good for about 10 miles.
Okay.
Oh.
And the next question is when you're oiling it that much out in the open, exposed to air, when you're going through a dust storm or something like that, did you have to clean it somehow or another? Or?
They probably didn't. Who would want to be out in an air storm with this thing here on it?
Well, but I wouldn't want to be out in this air storm or a snowstorm on the back of a horse either. But there were a lot of them that did it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is an interesting engine. It is a total loss oil system. There is an oil pan down here with an oil pump on it, which pumps the oil to the crankshaft.
Okay.
And when it gets through splashing around, it dumps it out on the ground.
No.
Really?
Yeah, so you had to keep watching your level and make sure you kept the oil level.
Now,
okay.
was that in agreement with the road company so that the roads were oiled on a regular
There
basis?
you go, dust control.
And there's no idiot light in the car to tell you when it's out of oil. So that's why you need to pay attention.
Okay.
The idiot light had not been invented yet.
Well, geez.
When was the idiot light invented? Is what I want to
God,
know.
I don't remember. In the 50s somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe
Wow.
late 40s. Anyway.
So you
I
had to keep
digress.
up on things.
I'm just
They
here.
call them idiot lights because they weren't idiots prior to that time.
No. I'm just here as the color commentator to inject stupid stuff. So
Well,
that's my role
that's
here.
my job. You can't take that away from
Oh,
me,
okay.
Tom.
This
Okay.
is called the barrel hood model. The reason it's called the barrel hood model, it's quite obvious, okay?
Yes, it looks like a 55 or 35 gallon drum.
Yes, and Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, and a few other car companies had the same design.
Okay.
These are acetylene lamps. The
Okay.
gas tank for that is on the running board.
Okay.
You take it to the blacksmith shop to have it filled. Some of the other older cars had a generator on the side of the car where you put the water and the carbide pellets in, which made the gas for the headlights. But you have to get out, open the door, open up a little valve to light these headlights.
And then you had to light it with a match.
Yeah,
Okay. And then you closed it back up and hope the wind didn't blow through.
they're pretty good, really good.
Okay. And you've got a water.
That's for the people.
Oh, there's the
water
water
bags.
bag. I was thinking, where's the water bag? It's
The water bag is for the people. Those bags, like when I was a kid, we'd have about 3 or 4 of them on the front of the car. If we were going to Casa Grande or Phoenix, we'd have those filled with water. Those bags sweat.
Okay.
And of course, then it makes the water very cool, evaporation.
Okay.
And I've drank water out of those bags cold enough to hurt my teeth.
Even in 100-degree weather.
Yes, they were cold. So
And this is a canvas bag with a lid on it and a rope that you hung off the front of your car.
Right,
Wow. I've seen those before. I always thought that they were carried by cars in order to fill up the radiator
That's
when they
also-
boiled over. But
Also, two things for the car. One bag for the car and one bag for the people.
wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd heard that they were for the people at someplace else where I was at, and I was kind of surprised by that. Okay, now we're looking at a 1918 Model 9B Touring.
This is a modern car. It has an electric starter, it has a generator, it has electric lights, unlike the brass era cars. The brass era is over. Now we're in, what are we in? The Iron Age? I don't know, the Steel Age.
Yeah, it now becomes a lady's car because she can just jump in it and go.
It's a big leap.
Without having to crank it.
It's a great leap forward. Think of it that way.
Oh, yeah. Electric cars were really popular back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I think that the electric start is what basically put those out of business. You didn't have to get out and crank your car. And that's was the attraction to the electric vehicles. You could just jump in them and go.
Yes. They didn't go very far. That was the problem.
Right. And so this one here's got the bottom fan in it that brings it on up through the engine and exits out the top.
Right. You can see the plenums there in the hood.
Okay. And this one here must be self-oiling to where you didn't need to have an oil can.
250 miles.
You had, 250 miles.
As opposed to 10.
You took these caps off.
And then filled them full of oil?
There's felt in there that you fill, that you oil.
Oh, okay. And so this is a 6-cylinder car. You've got 6 caps that would look like air cleaner caps on a Briggs & Stratton motor.
Okay.
And you take the bolt off of the top and you put like the air cleaner in the Briggs & Stratton motor, there's a felt in there or a sponge, and you put oil on there, and that's what oiled your upper end.
Right.
Wow. That is way cool.
There's one other feature of this car that's kind of neat. All you got was a tire and a tube for a spare.
Okay.
That is a split rim wheel. Very dangerous.
Right.
Anyway, when you got through repairing your tire and getting that all back together again, and all the words that go with it, here is an air compressor.
Oh, really?
Built in.
And that air compressor runs off of?
The generator.
The generator. Okay. And so there wasn't a pressure container as far as a holding tank.
You just hook a hose to it. There's a hose underneath the seat long enough to reach all 4 wheels so you could service all your tires at any time.
Wow. Was that just a special feature to the Franklins?
There's a lever here that you turn on and off.
Okay. And
but no tank.
But no tank. And this was pretty much a specific thing to the Franklins, or?
This model had, all these years, this model had that on it.
Okay. And what about like the Fords or the Chevys or any of those? Do you know?
You had to buy some extra thing for those.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so the split rim that he's talking about, and it being extremely dangerous, which they are, if not handled correctly, is you've got an outer ring that you can take off, and then your tire will just slide off so that you don't have to try and have tire changing bars and stuff to get it to break off the rim. But the problem is when you would inflate these tires, if that ring wasn't set right, it would come off of there with a lot of velocity and enough potential to decapitate or blow your hand off or all kinds of things.
Right.
So
this is called, this car was designed, it's a Series 9. It was good from 1917 to 1921. It's called a shovel nose or the Renault style.
Okay. And
this car got over 40 miles to the gallon.
Are you serious? And now if you buy a little tiny Prius, you can get 40 miles to the gallon.
Where have we gone wrong?
Someplace we've gone wrong. And what was the speeds that this was doing? It was only doing 25 or 30?
40, it would get up to 45, easy.
Okay, so it'd do 45 miles an hour, 40 miles to the gallon.
Yeah.
And now we've got these newer cars that maybe, they cruise along at 65 or 70, but they still only get 40 miles to the gallon and they're hybrids.
Right.
Something's goofy with everything, it seems to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, then you've got a 1940 or 24.
24. This car only has 3,000 miles on it. Original miles. It was bought in Syracuse, New York. The guy drove it to California, parked it in a barn, and left it.
Are you serious?
So that's all the miles that are on it. They jacked it up, and it was in a garage. And in 1956 or so, it was in an estate. So a termite inspector came to check out the building for the estate people and found this car. He went up and talked to the estate people, and he bought the car for $400.
Really? But that was 1950.
Yeah.
which is the dollar figure there would be a lot more extreme. I mean, it's what, $5,000 or something.
It's at least 10 times 10, maybe 12 times 12, something like that.
Okay, so he still paid a decent price for it, but $400 now sounds like nothing.
It was $400 was probably a steal then too. If you think about it.
Oh yeah. Now, what are these cars worth now as far as collectors? Are they in the super high dollar collector stage, or
they're around 100,000? Actually, at an auction or in the books where you see them, like in Hemmings and whatnot, they go for between 50 and 80,000.
That's for a collector car. That's really still kind of reasonable.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And what about the ones like in our first gallery? Would those be in kind of the same ballpark?
That's what I'm referring to when you say those. These here, I'm sure these guys here in these conditions would get like $100,000 or better.
Okay. Yeah. Because those are such classy. Yeah. Well, all of these are classy looking cars. I just and the lines even on like the 1924, 1925, the hood is really rounded.
It's called the horse collar design.
Okay, yeah, I can see like a horse collar for a driving horse. It's looks very similar, but the lines just kind of blend right on in from the hood into the front end. And
that's a different hood on this.
The shovel nose?
Was this the Renault, the French?
Renault or the shovel nose.
Okay. Yeah. These cars are just so fascinating. And such a one-of-a-kind deal. Okay, so now we're going to move on out to the next gallery.
There's still 1.5 buildings left.
We got 1.5 buildings left.
And on the way from one building to the next, you get to see the giant Catalina Mountains 20 miles away, and there's a 7,000-foot altitude differential.
Last night, we spent the night at a campground on Mount Lemmon.
Oh, you did?
We drove up Mount Lemmon, and I cannot recommend that drive enough. When we were at the Wildlife Museum doing our podcast there, the lady said that this is one of the only places you can see from desert all the way to snow and alpine-type conditions within about a 30-minute or 40-minute ride. And coming up the hill, the view of Tucson and the valley was absolutely gorgeous. And the further we climbed, we got up into the tall pine trees. And it was a beautiful, beautiful drive.
Even the aspens, the aspens are at the very tippy top. That's another state, that's a different climate zone than the pine trees.
It is just, if anybody comes here, they definitely need to do the Mount Lemmon thing because it is such a pretty and cool drive. Okay, so now we're into 1930s.
This is 1931 coupe. This was the very first Franklin that Tom bought. He bought this car from one of the engineers at the Syracuse factory.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And so this was a brand new car that he bought?
Brand new, almost brand new. This, by the way, is the original green paint on this car.
Really? It hasn't been touched up?
No.
And it's got the rumble seat again.
It does.
And the golf compartment.
Yes.
And the spare tire and the fenders.
We call those side mounts.
Side
side mounts.
Not spare tires in the fenders.
No. You can have
let's get technical here.
You can have single side mounts or dual side mounts.
Okay.
2 spare tires in a fender on each side.
Wow.
These are these singles?
No,
there's
dual.
dual. And this one.
They're all dual.
They all are. Well,
wow.
Yeah, so they are.
Yeah, that one's dual too.
Anyway.
This is not a true Franklin. This is called an Olympic.
Okay.
Our earlier discussion.
Right.
We could buy these. Franklin could buy these cars from the Ori Olds company.
Okay.
Ori Olds, Oldsmobile.
Right.
Okay. Put his running gear in it. Sell the car for $1,500 instead of the Franklin $3,000 or $4,000.
Really?
He was trying to create a money flow.
Okay.
And it was too late, of course. But.
And this was the bankruptcy period of time.
This is the 33.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting concept. So, so he had his Franklin running gear inside of an Olds body.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was this car called in the Olds lineup?
It wasn't in the Olds.
It was the Olympic.
This was just an Olympic. It was not even an Olds. It was
Okay, so it wasn't like Ford buying Chevelle
No.
and sticking their body on the running gear.
No.
Okay, was it on, if you bought the thing new and you got your title, did it say Franklin Olympic or did it say Olympic?
Olympic.
It said Olympic,
Yes,
period. Did not say Franklin anywhere
No, it
on it.
didn't.
Wow.
But underneath it was.
Yeah.
Okay, that is interesting. And Olds is kind of an interesting story if anybody wants to look it up, because I just got through reading an article, I think, in Hemmings Motor News about Mr. R.E. Olds, and it was an interesting story.
Okay. But that's another show, as we
That's
say.
another show. Yeah, we'll see if I can get to an Olds dealership.
Now, here. I don't know why I'm infatuated with these hood designs, but here's a 34, and you see the swooping, streamlining beginning.
And what is the hood ornament? The hood ornament looks kind of like a...
It's supposed to indicate flight or air.
Okay, I was going to say, it looks kind of like a bird with its wings way up.
The spirit of flight.
Okay.
Flight.
Okay. Again, another beautiful car.
Okay.
And this is in the brown tones.
This is in the brown tone. This is the 34. And this was the last car that Tom restored.
Did Mr. Franklin ride around in this car?
This one here.
This one. Okay.
So we took it to Pebble Beach, and it got second place because the taillight was burnt out.
Oh, no.
Oh, jeez.
That's getting critical.
But this is a beautiful car. I did a lot of the engine work on it, and it's a beautiful driving car. These engines have 7 main bearing cranks in them. Makes them extremely smooth. And this car here, by the way, idles at 250 RPM. When you come to a stop sign,
Really?
you swear the damn thing quit.
Yeah, 250 RPM is...
That's like airplane territory.
I was going to say, most of your modern cars and stuff are idling at, what, about 750?
5 to 8,
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
Okay, and this one has suicide doors, which, if somebody doesn't understand what suicide doors are, the front doors open the way a normal car would, but then you've got the door handle for the back one right next to the front door handle, and it swings out. And the reason that they're called suicide, from my understanding, is if your door doesn't close and you're going down the road at 30 miles an hour and you open it up to close it, you're going out.
Yeah, it sucks you right out of the seat, throws you right underneath the rear tire.
Right.
There's the reason for the suicide.
Yep. Don't want to open those doors when you're going down the road.
That was the sound of the door closing.
And didn't that sound
It
good?
sounded wonderful, didn't it?
Sounds nice and solid. And now you guys still drive some of these cars once in a while, don't you?
That one is a daily driver now. I rotate the cars. I'm going to take this one back out again and make a daily driver out of it.
And when you say daily driver, you're driving it every day or once a week or take it to shows? Or...
Yeah, to shows, and sometimes a couple times a week we take them out and run them around just to keep them up and everything.
Dang, that sounds like lots of fun. How do you get on the list to be the driver?
You want to be a volunteer?
Actually, I would love to be a volunteer.
That's all it takes.
Really?
That's how I get volunteers.
You
Yeah, they say, man, how do I get to drive one of these cars? I said, if you become a volunteer, you can possibly get to drive one of these, and it's just like that.
Oh, I'll bet it is.
Considering-
If I lived in Tucson, I'd be down here every day.
Consider yourself recruited.
Recruited.
Here is another aircraft engine.
Okay.
This is a flat 12. It's the one we saw earlier was a 4. This is a 12. This
Okay.
one was in an experimental drone in 1942.
Okay, a drone in 1942. That was unmanned aircraft?
They would launch it. They'd use a guy to get the thing off the ground, and then he would bail out. Is that right? Something
don't
like
know
that.
about that.
Yeah, I've heard this. I've read this somewhere, but it was a little scary launching it. So they used a
Right.
human to launch it, and then after he jumped out with his parachute,
I'm not volunteering
it would continue.
anymore.
We're not going to recruit you for that. So, anyway. The drone would fly around and drop bombs and do reconnaissance and then hope it came back in one piece. This engine was never used. They canceled the program. It didn't work too well. But they built several engines, and this one was ready to go in a drone when the program was canceled.
Oh, really?
So you could crank it up and make it go. Maybe it's got 0 hours on it.
Wow. And this thing's huge. It's probably what, almost 5 foot long.
Well, it's I think there are placard there gives some information about the displacement. I'm not sure how big this thing actually is, but
it says it's 50 inches wide and 36 inches long.
So it's 3 by 4.
Okay.
But what's the power? The power and the displacement.
It's 450 horsepower at 3,200 RPMs, and it's 850 inch 12-cylinder 805.
There we go.
Cubic inch.
An 805
cubic inch. And the weight on it is 590 pounds, which is really kind of amazing because I would have thought that weighed a lot more than 600 pounds.
But Franklin was big on aluminum and nickel and exotic. He was using advanced alloys before other people were.
Okay.
So that's part of the secret of this.
Wow.
Is to keep the weight down. The power to weight ratio is quite favorable here.
Okay. And it says this aircraft would have been a radio-controlled twin-engine mid-wing monoplane with provisions for carrying up to 2,000 pounds of explosives via bomb, torpedo, or depth charge. Wow. So, okay.
It's a sidebar.
I didn't know that they had radio control back in the 40s.
Yeah.
And what would the range have been on that? I mean, you're thinking a drone, you would have had to have some range in order to be dropping those bombs. You'd almost have to be front line and hoping to hit something, what, a mile away or something?
Oh, more than a mile. I'm sure it's more than a mile.
But even like CB radios, you're out of range at 5-6 miles, 10 miles?
Not
maybe?
even.
Yeah, the pilot plane was 5 miles behind the drone.
5, is that? Okay.
Oh, so they were flying a plane behind it?
Yes, it was radio controlled.
Here's the guy. We can't see it on the podcast, but there's looks like a single engine fighter plane.
Right.
Behind, 5 miles behind. And that second guy controlling the radio for the drone.
Okay. And you're probably really hoping that once you get up in the air, that plane is 5 miles back before you open your chute.
That's true. You don't want to get sucked into the thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so in the corner there is a Packard.
Okay.
And we do have a couple cars that are not Franklin's.
Okay.
We used to be pure Franklin, and we've kind of polluted ourselves a little bit, but it's okay.
It's okay.
Because they're Packards.
I was going to say.
Which is a pretty good car.
A Packard's nothing to balk at.
It's true.
And what's the story with the tile here in the middle of the floor? You've got...
This is interesting. This is the room that we did all the upholstery work in.
Oh, okay.
Commercial. The interesting thing is, every now and then, Tom would take and he'd move everything out of here, clean it out, go downtown and get some mariachis, and we'd have a weekend party.
Oh, well.
So we, in the introductory video, which we were not able to play, it states, I believe, that Tom was born in 1925 and died in 1993.
Right.
Does that sound right? So Tom's best years were from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. That's a long run.
Yeah.
Before he had to retire and leave this realm.
Yeah, well, he did this car in 92.
92, that's at the very end.
Yes, right, and he died in 93, January of 93.
Okay.
So we just got this car. Just when he started this car, it was just going to be a daily driver, okay?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Tom come around and says, "No," he says, "I just got invited to Pebble Beach." And of course, you get invited to that show. You don't just go.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden, it became time to do a nice job on it, and it basically why it got second place is beyond me, because there's stuff underneath here that's bad.
Wasn't you're saying it might have been third or fourth.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And so they did good. I think it's because Tom's name and whatnot. The other cars that he had were all Class A cars. So
now this
and so who has the museum now?
It's in a trust.
Oh, okay. Okay, and so the trust keeps everything going.
I'm sorry, I can't sell you any of these cars.
Okay, because they're in the trust.
They're in the trust, right.
And it would be untrustworthy to do so.
There you go.
Okay, so tell us about the Packard.
What year is this? Oh, no, that can't be right.
31?
A 31. It's a 31 Packard 833, and it's a straight 8.
Okay.
And it does have a water bag for the radiator because it does have water cooling. This is
right.
It may look on the outside sort of like a Franklin, but under the hood is quite different.
It's another $3,000 or $4,000 car, and that was the competition for Franklin, along with Cadillac and other car companies. I forget, Cord,
Right.
and whatnot. The
Auburn.
interesting thing about this car is the two bottom headlights turn with the wheels.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yes.
So kind of like the Tucker was trying to do. Wow.
The
So you can see
Citron.
around so it has the two big headlights, and then it's got two bottom lights, and those lights turn with the front end. Wow, that is really cool.
But these dual horns,
Uh-huh.
they're stationary. They don't turn.
They don't turn. And the hood ornament on the Packards were always really cool.
Yes,
You got a winged man holding a, I don't know who
Like
he
a
is,
Swan.
but
I don't either.
a Spartan or something.
But he's got a wheel. He's like got the
Right.
front wheel of his motorcycle. I don't know what that looks like. But you can look-
It's pretty ornate.
Yeah.
And this is a straight 8, like he said, liquid cooled. Again, beautiful car. It's kind of a cream color with a.
Actually, it's yellow.
Oh, it's a yellow car. Again, we're dealing with lighting, maybe.
But if you park this next to the 25 in our Franklin, they are different. They're not the same yellow. This is a creamier yellow. The other one is more of a
This car was
green
originally
yellow.
gray and black.
Okay.
And when they restored it, they painted it this color here.
Okay. Well, this is a beautiful car too. All these cars are beautiful. This is like, to me, this is an art museum.
Thank you.
Because the car styles back then and the little features and the little things that made them unique. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's so cool is that there were so many different manufacturers back then. Yeah. And all of them had their own little quirks and their own little styles. And it's just so cool to look at what was being done and the engineering and thinking about the technology that they didn't have that we have now. And now all our cars look like pills. And these things here they're classic looking pieces of machinery.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a half a building left.
Well, let's go see the half a building.
Yep. We can cut around this way.
Okay. Now, I guess while we're on our way to this other building, I want to kind of bring up some points that I've thought about coming in here. The first time I came in here, this museum sits in kind of an a really out-of-the-way place. When you type it into your GPS, which is the best thing to do, follow your GPS. Do not question your GPS, which is kind of a strange thing to say because you always question GPS. But you're going to go down a paved road, then you're going to go down a gravel road, then you're going to turn down an alley, then you're going to pull into a little driveway with a couple of different buildings on it, and you're going to think that you are absolutely lost. But if you think you're lost, you know you're here.
It doesn't help.
I get telephone calls all the time from people. The road just turned to dirt. I think we're lost.
Yep, and you're not. Like I said, this is one place that you type it into your GPS, and no matter what you think, you go ahead and follow that GPS and you will end up here.
It doesn't help that we have two addresses. We have an address on Kleindale and we have an address on Vine.
Okay.
It's the corner where the corners of those two streets meet. That's where we are.
Okay.
So.
Well, however it works, all I know is if you type in Franklin Car Museum in Tucson, you get here.
Yeah.
So there are no more. You've seen all 27 of the Franklins. This is now another Packard and a Chevrolet.
Okay.
And we put the Chevrolet in here to show the difference between, one of the reasons it's here is compare the difference. You see how great the Franklin is and how lowly the Chevrolet is. Chevrolet is a perfectly fine car, but it's much cheaper.
Right.
And if you examine it closely, you can see where
just looking at the body styling, it doesn't even begin to compare.
It's smaller. It's just physically smaller.
Right.
It weighs less. It's not as substantial. It's substantial, but it's not
And I wouldn't be at all upset having a Chevrolet parked in my
Certainly not.
garage. I mean,
Certainly
it's a
not.
beautiful, beautiful car.
It is.
But like you said, when you're comparing it to the Franklins, it's a whole different experience.
This is a straight six, water cooled. And if you look under the hood of a 48, 49, 50, 55 Chevrolet, it's kind of the same thing. It's a overhead valve,
straight six, just like the
inline
246
six.
straight six.
Yeah. They didn't
Right.
change them very much.
Right.
Chevrolet did experiment with an air-cooled engine, and it was an unmitigated disaster.
In the early years.
No, that was before the Corvair.
I'm not talking about the Corvair.
Okay,
because I should have
I was
clarified
going to say
that.
the Corvair was actually a
That was
success.
not a
Yes.
disaster.
Had
But
Ralph Nader not jumped in the middle of that, we'd have been okay.
Well, swing axles is not a good idea. He was right about some things. But was it 1923 that Chevy tried an air-cooled
That's
motor?
right, and it was a failure.
It totally failed. And they
Okay.
tried again later, and this time they got it right. But that's not what this is.
Okay, and this is a beautiful car. It's a two-tone
Yeah,
brown.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of a light brown with a dark brown top. Suicide
Doors. And do we have dual side mount? Yeah, looks like we got dual
But
side
you don't
mount.
have the
But
covers
it doesn't
on
have the
it.
cover on, right?
Thank goodness.
Cheaper.
Those covers were a pain.
I had a flat tire in the 34 sedan once, taking it to a show.
Uh-huh.
It took me an hour to get the damn cover off of it before I could even get to the tire.
It has a separate key, right? It's got its
Well,
own
not
key.
only that, but you got it. That cover comes off hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But it definitely adds to the looks of the car when you're driving it. I
And
mean, it cleans everything
It
up.
takes the sun off the tires. It saves the tires and all that. This 1924 Packard is a Tucson car. It was
Okay.
bought at a Tucson Packard dealer here for a little over $7,000.
In
24.
$7,000 in 24.
Multiplied by 20.
So $140,000 today car.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a beautiful car.
It was a wedding present for Miss Elizabeth Greenway, who was our first congresswoman
Oh, really?
and who built the Arizona Inn.
Okay. And so she was a federal congresswoman
Yeah,
or state?
Everything I've heard is fed to the Capitol in Washington.
Yeah.
She was
Okay.
our representative. We only had one in those days,
Wow.
so I got to look her up.
So this is kind of a celebrity car.
Right.
Yes.
It's also a daily driver. I keep this one running.
Really?
Now-
you take this one to shows and
Yeah,
stuff?
we take it to shows.
And if I volunteer?
Yeah.
Oh.
As soon as I
Yeah,
teach
but you
how
gotta
to
come
use
from-
the clutch and how to double clutch.
Okay.
But you're in Wyoming.
I know.
How do
Volunteering's
you-
going to be a little bit
It's
rough.
going to be the commute is going to kill you, but you'll find a way. And here's dual side mounts again, but they're not side mounts; they're back mounts.
they're on the back of
butt
the car.
mounts.
Yes.
Dual butt mounts.
And you'd think with all the spare tires that flats were a rather common
They were.
occurrence back in the
They
day.
were.
Yeah.
What was the life of a tire? You'd be lucky to get 10,000 miles out of a set
Oh,
of
you'd be
tires.
lucky. Now, here's a little bit different. Her husband was a mining engineer, and you would find this down in Ajo, Morenci, Bisbee, and whatnot. All those roads were dirt at the time. And to go from here to Ajo, he would use both of those spare tires to get there.
Really?
Yeah.
And the thing it's almost hard to even fathom driving a car like this on dirt roads just because of their beauty and their value now. I mean, the dirt roads had to chip up your fenders. And,
Yeah.
This car got restored in 1985.
Okay.
That's, what is that, almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely.
So we
beautiful.
try not to take it on too many dirt roads now. We
other
try to
than
keep
the
it on pavement.
road in and out
That's
of here.
only a
is
block, and we don't go fast. It's only a block, and we don't go over 15 miles an hour.
Okay.
Is this this is kind of a dual cowl thing. This has got the same
Oh
setup
yeah, it does.
with the
windscreen
second
in the back.
windshield for the back people.
And the leg room. Holy smokes!
Does
you
it have?
you
It's got
6
little
foot of leg room.
It's got little jump seats here,
Right.
So you can
Well,
put
she
extra
would
people.
pick
in
up
there.
her clients at the railroad station and take them to the inn.
Okay.
So they had to have room for the trunks going on.
Well,
And
you-
again, you brought up a point that I wanna bring back up. You've got this metal bar that looks like what we always called the chicken bar in the Volkswagen, the little one for the passenger to hold on to when things got a little bit too wild. you've got one of those that comes across the back seat, and you mentioned, and the first time I'd ever heard it, is that's a blanket
That blanket
rack.
bar.
It's attached to the back of the front seat.
Right.
Does this car have a heater?
Nope.
It could. Could it have had a
I
heater?
don't know.
It's a water-cooled engine.
I know.
You'd think they could have put a heater in it, but
Yeah, you'd have to have your heat exchanger and all that, your heat coil.
or would this have had a gasoline heater inside?
No.
That was not a thing.
No, only Corvair did that stupidly for one.
No, you could get a gasoline. I've seen pictures of cars from soon after this that had a
Okay.
gasoline heating system in the passenger compartment.
Okay.
That you poured gas in and lit it.
Yeah.
That sounds safe.
Oh yeah.
And they wonder why people back then didn't live long.
Where's Ralph Nader when we really need him?
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, these are all absolutely beautiful. And then you have a little bit of a gift shop over here.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay, now, you guys have a website, I think.
Yes, well, he would know.
Franklin Museum. Well, we better check it. I believe it's franklinmuseum.org
Okay.
because we are a nonprofit
Organization.
trust. Yeah.
Okay.
So franklinmuseum.org and franklinfoundation.org. We'll go inside and check that.
Okay.
We can pause the
We'll
thing.
go
and
with those.
We'll
And,
double, triple check
On
that.
YouTube, it's Franklin Auto Museum.
okay, and you've got some YouTube videos?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We got one with this car going all over the place.
Oh, wow.
Are those on Facebook?
They're on YouTube.
Okay. We also have a Facebook page.
Yeah, I know.
And
We've never
that's Franklin Museum?
Franklin Museum is the
Okay.
Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this has been so cool. I so appreciate Bill and Tom taking their time out of their day to talk with me about these beautiful cars. The museum is awesome. If you want to see some really cool stuff and you're in Tucson, actually, there's so much to see in Tucson. The museums here are awesome, and the trip up Mount Lemon's awesome, but the cars are unbelievably cool. And I usually finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. People need to get out and explore. Come see these museums. Come see these cars. You will not be disappointed, and have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?